Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Parkside Cabin Rentals. Whether you're looking for a romantic weekend getaway, corporate retreat spot for your whole team, or just a few days of solitude during the week, ParksideCabinRentals.com has cabin after cabin after cabin for you to check out. No one has a bigger, better selection of cabins in the Smokies than Parkside Cabin Rentals. You see the website right there. Go check it out. You will be very, very impressed. All right, this was supposed to be a long segment, and we went way over in that last segment. Mark and I arguing. So, quick hitters, sort of, like 2 minutes to each pairing here. But Isaiah and Mark, Auburn players spent a good minute, at least a minute, jumping up and down on the mid-court part of the word Tennessee on the court yesterday before the game. In the grand scheme of things, of World War and pandemics, it's kind of silly that this is a deal. But in the sports world, you don't jump on someone's logo. So, Isaiah, I ask you, would that have ticked you off if you were a UT player and you found out that the Auburn team was out there jumping on your logo?
Yeah. It definitely would have. As a matter of fact, I didn't like it, and I'm not even playing anymore.
Yesterday.
I didn't see it when I was at the game. I was actually in the opposing team's tunnel most of the time, and I must have got there a little later than when it happened. But when I saw it on TV, I was like, when did this happen? And my temperature went up a little bit. So, yeah, sports-wise, I didn't like it, especially – they were on the tee. If it were at half,
right.
A different spot maybe, but it seemed like it was deliberate.
They got as tight as they could, and then when the boos were cascading down, they were jumping a little higher, it seemed. Yeah, it was.
Nah, I didn't like it one bit, man.
Mark, you played for Bruce Pearl. You coached under Bruce Pearl. You got together with Bruce Pearl this weekend. You're still friends with him. But I ask you, did his team jumping up and down on the logo reveal anything about Bruce Pearl and his feelings toward Tennessee?
No, I mean, being around, shoot around, and being around him, I mean, he has nothing but positive things to say about here. Even in his interactions with at their pregame stuff, I mean, there was no trying to get this for BP or trying to put down Tennessee. It had nothing to do with that. My take on it was I'd be interested to see if they come to half court in their warm-ups, because when you're the only team out there warming up, sometimes you huddle at the top of the court, at the top of the key or a half court. Did the boos just amplify it? And then the kids got going, and it just became a thing. But no, BP or the coaching staff had nothing to do with going out there and stomping on a logo.
Have we ever seen a Barnes team do that?
No.
I can't remember that. Have we? I don't think so.
I think it ought to be a technical foul.
Well, here's the thing. You can't jump on our logo before
Yeah,
the
that's
game.
a technical foul, boys.
Well, there was a tweet, in case you missed it, a tweet from Bruce Pearl's daughter last night. I'm not going to say much about the game because I won't take anything away from Tennessee and how they played. But what I experienced today from Vol fans was abhorrent. I expected more from a place we gave our lives to and a place I once loved. Look, families are emotional, and I get that, but I would just say this. If you don't want to hear abhorrent things, don't dance on the other team's logo for a full minute before the game. That's kind of literally asking for it. I mean, that's all I would say there is, well, there's another thing I would say, and that is I don't think you gave your lives to the place. You didn't die. It's not Normandy. You got millions. But the whole dancing on the thing, you can expect people to be kind of ugly when you come out and taunt the opposing team on the mid-court stripe, but just my take. All right, Josh and Chuck, as we mentioned earlier, Tennessee went through yet another long, icy spell. Their defense keeps them in games, but do you trust this team in tournament play? Do you trust them?
Well, I always have some level of mistrust because of college basketball. When you go cold at any time, it applies to a lot of teams. I trust them more than I did a month ago or 2 months ago because along with the shooting, there was the whole vibe conversation, which we've talked about a little bit today, like the leadership and all that. I trust that. I trust that they're gonna fight and that they can overcome maybe a shooting struggle, which they did yesterday. So that, and we'll get to, I think they might have better seeding, so they'll be facing lesser teams early on. Yeah, I trust them more than I did.
Well, you can trust them at home. Right, you're 15-0, but I don't think, we've talked about this before, the neutral site games. You get away from Thompson-Boling Arena, it's a different team. Auburn just shot terrible. I mean, they shot worse than you did. Yeah. And that's why they dropped out of that. I'm surprised they didn't keep feeding the bigs. You keep shooting and missing, at some point you got to try something else. But I can't fully trust them on a neutral site court.
Okay, this is for everyone. We've got to make it somewhat quick, so I'm going to change the question just a tad. Rick Barnes is now 6-5 versus top 5 teams in Tennessee. You were up there. He is 6-3 in his last 9 games against top 10 teams. Again, you're at the upper echelon. He's got a winning record against Kentucky. the guy, let's see, he's now 5-7 against Bruce Pearl, who everybody judges him against. You're almost 500 there. But he hasn't made a deep tournament run, and the whole sport revolves around deep tournament runs. My question is, where is this program's level right now? I mean, is it 15 to 20? Top 15? Top 10 program? You're also getting 5 stars left and right. So what is this program's level right now, Isaiah? Compare it to when you played with Jerry Green. You had a lot of talent on that team. Where's the program now in terms of just the overall? A coach who's stable as opposed to what you had. Just overall, where's this program?
I believe I couldn't. Do you mean it's over the how many years?
Yeah, just right now,
for
should
Barnes.
Tennessee fans be feeling really, really good? I think we underappreciate what's going on over there. And I'm guilty of it too. After the Texas loss, now, granted, I'm speaking after a 7-1 stretch.
Right.
So that changes your perception. But after the Texas loss, I'm like, man, what are we looking at here? I think people are underappreciating it a little bit. What do you think this program is right
We're
now?
doing a lot. We're starting to get the recruits in. You're starting to see us get the McDonald's All-Americans. Like Kentucky was kind of the only team getting a bunch of them, and now we're getting 2 or 3 a year. So I think that's a good sign. So that means kids like to play here. So and then I think we're right outside a top 10 program in the nation. But I think the arrow's pointing up just because of this season, especially the end of this season. Because he's kind of doing, I won't say doing more with less, but they're kind of overachieving. Because I think a lot of people would have thought we would lose to Auburn and thought we would lose to Kentucky. Even though we're at home, you still got to play the guys. So I think we're headed in the right direction, headed towards the top 10.
Mark Bruce Pearl built this into a top 15 program. I think everyone would agree it's one of the top 15 programs. Has Rick Barnes built it back to that level? Are you a top 15 year in, year out? I know there's going to be the exception to the rule, but year in, year out, do you consider Tennessee a top 15 program?
You think about, North Carolina may not make the NCAA tournament. Michigan State may not make the NCAA tournament. Virginia, who won the national championship, may not make the NCAA tournament. Barnes has this team, not only are they a top 15, but they're consistent. Where even the best of the best, who you would be thinking of like North Carolina, well, they're a top 5 program. Well, they might not make the NCAA tournament. And so this program is definitely a top 15 program.
Agree or disagree?
I would say definitely as well. You have assistants that get higher weight to become head coaches, so the structure of the program as well, this quality behind the scenes people are great. It's a high level program.
And the context I go back to is in one of the toughest basketball leagues in the country, SEC. If you're finishing in the top 4 and doing that, the national part's going to take care of itself.
And credit Barnes, that's a good point you bring up, Josh. Credit Barnes because he has lost those guys, and yet they continue to roll over here. I just think when you look at those numbers, there aren't many stretches in Tennessee basketball history, including when Pearl was here, including when Ray Mears was here, when Tennessee had a winning record against Kentucky over a long stretch of games, when Tennessee was 6-3 against top 10 programs, when Tennessee was 6-5 against top 5 programs. I realize there's no tournament brass ring yet, and that's the key. But year in, year out, week in, week out, there hadn't been many stretches as good as what you got right now for what Rick Barnes is putting on the court overall. All right, that said, what's the seeding outlook for Tennessee? Is a 3 a lock? Is a 2 a possibility? That's next. Come on back on the Sports Source.